Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The U.S. Justice Department releases 3 million pages, 180,000 images and 2,000 videos linked to Jeffrey Epstein. The release comes after a missed legal deadline, with officials saying it ends a major review to ensure transparency. The U.S. government enters a partial shutdown after Congress fails to pass a 2026 budget. Lawmakers signal a quick fix as the House moves to ratify a Senate-backed deal next week. According to a statement by the Danish Foreign Ministry, Denmark will reopen its embassy in Damascus after a 14-year closure, with Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen saying embassy will resume operations to better monitor developments and boost cooperation with Syria. The U.S. Chief of Mission for Venezuela is set to arrive in Caracas as the government proposes a broad amnesty law. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez says the bill could free hundreds of political detainees and transform a notorious prison. Iran says it is ready for fair and equitable talks with the United States as regional tensions continue to rise. President Donald Trump refuses to rule out military action, while Tehran says negotiations cannot occur under threats. Washington approves $6.67 billion in arms sales to Israel amid a fragile Gaza ceasefire. The package includes 30 Apache attack helicopters and infantry assault vehicles, according to the State's Department. According to local officials, at least 200 people were killed after heavy rains triggered devastating landslides at a mine in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, which is controlled by M23 rebels, while authorities warned the toll could rise as rescue operations continue. According to international media reports, Guinea-Bissau has opposition leader Domingos Simões Pereira was released from jail on Friday after months in detention following the November military coup that ousted President Umaro Sissoco Embalo just days after presidential elections. Now for this hour, we start with the U.S. Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged abuses have shared their outrage following the U.S. government's release of millions of pages from the Epstein's files on January 30 this year. In a powerful statement, the survivors claimed that the identifying information about them remains in the documents, while the men who allegedly abused them continue to be hidden and protected. The letter, signed by 19 survivors, some using aliases, demands the full release of the Epstein files and calls for Attorney General Pam Bondi to address these concerns when she testifies before Congress next month. The survivors asserted that while the files include explicit details about their trauma, the abusers remain safe, their names omitted or left redacted, while the victim's identity is exposed. These allegations come after the Justice Department's release of over 3 million documents, which include at least 180,000 images and 2,000 videos linked to the Epstein case, while some documents contained untrue and sensationalist claims about Trump, according to the department. The files have only further fueled the controversy surrounding the case. Survivors' call for full transparency highlights the lingering fears of victimization and the pain of seeing their suffering revealed without the protection they deserve. They demand that all the information be made available and that justice be served in their cases. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ben Aris. He's a former Moscow bureau chief of the Daily Telegraph, joins us live from Berlin. Thank you very much, Mr. Aris, for joining us again. Good to see you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Now, what are we to make of this latest releases of Jeffrey Epstein files?
It's a huge scandal, isn't it? I mean, the sitting president, has been accused of raping 13-year-old girls, and moreover, some of the other victims have completely disappeared. Don't know where they are. And in any normal country, this should have sparked a full investigation, criminal charges if applicable. Epstein himself was a convicted paedophile. The fact of his so-called suicide in jail is also highly suspicious, and yet the whole thing is being swept under the rug. The State Department, Pam Bondi is obscuring the investigation. They haven't released details. There hasn't been a proper formal investigation. At the very least, one would have thought that given the severity of the claims against Trump in particular, but not just, it seems to be a lot of the elite in the States, not just politicians, but business people. Even Prince Andrew has been caught up in this from the UK. And nothing's happening. Impeachment process would be appropriate, if you ask me, at least to trigger an investigation. And now you've got the victims coming forward with details, that would stand up in a court of law, and yet it's not being put in the front of a court of law. And this just sort of underscores the fact that you've got a two-speed system in the States where regular people, particularly poor people, are regularly put on trial and jailed. And yet the elite, they get off scot-free, and either it doesn't go to trial, or if it does, the evidence is redacted. And if they are convicted, then they go to some farm and spend a few weeks in jail or a year, and then are released.
Yes, and so what about the survivors who have said that this latest report once again exposes them, the victims, instead of the perpetrators or the people who are to be brought to justice? What are we to make of that?
It's a heinous crime, and if you're a rape victim, then the process of coming forward and seeking justice is incredibly painful. I mean, we really don't want to go there if you can possibly avoid it. But if you're brave enough to do that, and I should emphasize you have to be extremely brave to do that because it just revives that horrible experience, then at least you should, in front of the courts, the legal system is there to, quote unquote, protect you from exactly this sort of thing. And what we're seeing here is a massive failure of the legal system to actually uphold its duty and protect these women, particularly children. There were children when this happened to them. And yet they're coming forward, they're giving the details, they're reviving all that pain, psychologically damaged their whole lives as a result of this. And nothing's happening. They're not getting justice. And as I said, for me, this is just a collapse of the legal system that protects the elite, ignores the law, and these women have to suffer all that pain all over again and not get justice at the end of the day.
Yes. Last but not least, how should Trump administration deal with this?
There's only one way. It's full disclosure. It's to hand over the documents, the evidence, of which there is a lot, and give it to an independent prosecutor to investigate, make the interviews, what have you, forensic evidence, whatever they can get their hands on, and then go to trial and accuse him to his face, all of them, of their crimes, and then the prosecutor has to prove their guilt in front of an impartial jury. And if they're found guilty, they should be sent to jail along with everybody else, along with the poor people who are, perpetrating similar crimes. They should face the same justice system and the same punishments as anybody else if they're found guilty.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that, Mr. Harris. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Russia and US and Cuba. Russia has strongly condemned the United States over its new sanctions against Cuba. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said that Washington's measures are illegitimate and put undue pressure on the Cuban government and its people. She has said that the U.S. strategy of maximum pressure is aimed at economically stifling the island of freedom. Zakharova has criticized the executive order issued by the White House on January 29th, calling it a violation of international law and the UN Charter. The Russian diplomat has emphasized the deep historical and economic ties between Russia and Cuba, calling their cooperation comprehensive and beneficial for both nations. She added that this partnership is not aimed against any third country and will continue to support international security and stability despite U.S. pressure. Now we welcome back Mr. Ben Aris. He's joining us live from Berlin. Thank you very much, Mr. Aris, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, can you tell us a little bit of history between Russia and Cuba's ties?
Well, it's very famous history, isn't it? It goes right back to 62, I think it was, when Khrushchev put missiles into Cuba and Kennedy reacted, and we had the famous Cuban Missile Crisis, where we nearly had a nuclear exchange between the US and the Soviet Union. In the end, Khrushchev backed off because of Kennedy's quote-unquote blockade and forced them to take the missiles out. But ever since then, following the Cuban Revolution that saw Fidel Castro come to power, the relationships have been awful. And since the same 62, the US has imposed sanctions on Cuba and has been keen to see the regime toppled. And that brings us right up to today. And now we have this new aggressive Monroe Doctrine, the updated Monroe Doctrine by Trump, which is basically the Western Hemisphere, including the Caribbean, belongs, quote unquote, to America. And they already did regime change in Venezuela and decapitated the government there by abducting, kidnapping the sitting president in a special military operation. And again, ironically, they have to call it a special military operation in the same way as Putin is calling his invasion of Ukraine a special military operation, because to invade is an act of war. And the argument here, a bit of legalese fluffing, is that if you call it a special military operation, that's not an act of war, and therefore it's quote unquote legal. And now that Venezuela is under US control de facto, they're turning their attention to Cuba, and everyone's very nervous because Trump set a new precedent. If you don't like the regime, in the old days, the CIA would go in and spend money and try to pervert the course of whatever elections they had. Now you just fly helicopters in and kidnap the guys you don't like and put them on trial in New York on trumped-up charges where have no jurisdiction. Yes. So there's references there in your report to the UN Charter, which guarantees the integrity of sovereign states, that you cannot just do what you like to another country. And also international law, which makes all of this illegal. And the sanctions, such as they are being imposed, these are nominally a tool to enforce international law, but international law has completely collapsed. Trump's made it perfectly plain that he's not going to pay any attention to international law whatsoever. He says the only defining factor for him is, quote unquote, my morality. In other words, whatever he wants to do. And Russia, ironically, is looking like a grown-up in the room, although it's guilty of invading Ukraine illegally. It's now pointing out that what Trump is doing is the same. It's the same game plan. It's like, do what you like and use your military to get what you want. And sanctions have become not a tool of international law, but a weapon you use against countries you don't like.
Right, and now that the United States has put new sanctions against Cuba, why do they not like Cuba? What's up with that?
It's a regime thing, isn't it? I mean, Fidel Castro is a rebel, a communist, and that doesn't fit with the right-wing politics of the States, and so they're having a go at Cuba, attacking it with sanctions. But, ironically, the same logic extends with the US relationship with Europe, which is nominally a partner, which is nominally democratic, but they've made it very clear that they don't like the parties, the left-leaning parties that dominate Europe, values-based, and that they are openly going to support the right-wing and far-right. So here in Germany, we have the AfD, which is a neo-fascist party to an effect, and Trump administration has said they're openly going to support and promote the AfD in Europe, despite the fact that Germans themselves are doing everything they can, the people, to keep the AfD out of power. And its popularity is rising because of the general dissatisfaction with the state of the economy and the Ukraine war, et cetera, et cetera. But Trump has openly declared to interfere in European politics, but not with helicopters, economic pressure and funding in the old school way of doing it. And in Cuba, there are much less restraints on the states, so they have all the options on the table, including an oil blockade, which is an act of war, including funding opposition, and ultimately including flying Black Hawk helicopters into Havana and trying to kidnap the president.
So now looking at sanctions once again, that Trump is using sanctions over whoever he doesn't like in particular. So how is that working out for US, and do you think that he can attain his goals by just putting sanctions and tariffs to achieve whatever he wants?
He thinks he can, and in the short term, he's probably working as far as he's concerned. Venezuela has the biggest reserves of oil in the world, 300 billion barrels, which is about 3 or 4 times more than what the US has. And the upshot within a week or two of the change of regime or the decapitation, there was a deal done with 50 million barrels of oil was sold by an American company, and pocketed the money, which is nominally Venezuelans' money, but it's sitting in a bank in Qatar, and the Americans are controlling it, and now they're going to say, look, we're going to quote unquote help the country by making some of that money available for development. So in the short term, yes, it works. In the longer term, clearly Trump is massively undermining America's image, its credibility in the rest of the world. Everyone else is now rapidly trying to diversify away from any exposure to the states, and as a result of that, we're going to see trade deals, and we're seeing them already, like the EU trade deal with India. Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, is in Beijing at the moment doing a trade deal, and we're also going to see other consequences like the rapid de-dollarization of global trade, and that's already happening in Reserve Company. And so all of the key one, the really painful one, is countries like China are now rapidly selling down what US Treasury bills they hold. And that's going to be, in the longer term, a huge problem for the States because it won't be able to borrow. Yes. And it's got a massive $37 trillion debt. And if people stop buying its bonds, then the cost of that borrowing is going to go up. And that's going to not only cripple the American economy, it could bring it down. I mean, America is predicated on the fact that it can borrow so cheaply at infinitely low rates because everybody holds its T-bills. Yes. So the long-term consequences of this are very severe, but of course they're going to take a long time to play out. You can't sell T-bills off quickly, it's a question of years. But that process is already very clearly underway.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for highlighting that and shedding light on that, Mr. Aris. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to Middle East, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, Israeli airstrikes in Gaza have killed at least 12 people, including children. One strike hit an apartment in Gaza City, killing 3 children and 2 women. Another strike hit a tent in Khan Yunis, farther south. The Israeli military says it is investigating the reports and has not immediately confirmed carrying out these strikes. However, this comes as Washington pushes for the progress on the next phase of the peace deal, including Hamas disarmament, further Israeli withdrawal, and the possible deployment of international peacekeepers. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Ali Mohammed Bushbak. He's a Middle East researcher, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Mr. Bushbak, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what more can you tell us about the reality on the ground in Gaza?
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks is Israel trying to create a fact on the ground by force and fire. Israel yesterday and today morning during the dawn has assassinated a tunnel for the Palestinian civilians and the police station that organized by Hamas. So the thing is, if we will look at the Israelis targeting since yesterday and today morning, Israel have been changed the target and the aims of target from the civilians as well as to the a police station. That means Israel trying to create a chaos in Gaza, because as you know, since you know this, if there is a no police in Gaza, if there is no security, there is a no calm in the situation, and the community will be unstable. So Israel trying to create a new fact in Gaza, that a security vacuum in Gaza, which make the civilians more frustrated without any steadfast in Gaza. So that's lead them to leave Gaza ASAP once the a border between Gaza and Egypt will reopen. By that, most of the assumption that tomorrow they will reopen the border between Gaza and Egypt, but up to now it's not clear, since the first phase of the negotiation or of the peace plan of Donald Trump, it's committed to Israel to reopen the border in October 2025, but up to now Israel is delaying to reopen the border, making the civilians' life more frustrated, as several of hundreds of Palestinians who got injured during the war, they are waiting and eagerly await for the border reopen for a treatment journey for them, but up to now there is no clarity about it. There is on one side. On another side, if we look at the number of Israelis violating of the ceasefire, they are human rights organization register more than and report more than 1,300 Israeli violated during the ceasefire on 11th October 2025. This number and the huge number of Israeli violation, that means Israel tried to create a new fact that neither war nor peace. This freezing and this unstable situation, making allowing to Israel to assassinate whoever and to continue whatever failed during the war in Gaza, during the Israel's military campaign in Gaza, that they couldn't access and they couldn't reach. Israel now, similarity in Lebanon, that what they are doing a specific targeting and making the situation unstable. Especially we are going through a second phase of peace plan that put it by Donald Trump. So the thing says here, Israel doesn't want a peace in Gaza, doesn't want a situation to be as stable, rather than Israel wanted unstable situation and force and lead the civilians to deport Gaza by force and by fire. This is the new fact. Why Benjamin Netanyahu is doing this? He's trying to skip a corruption trail for him. And since you know that Benjamin Netanyahu, they are, accuse him by corruption cases in Israel, and he trying to skip the trail and trying to make the community, Israeli community, busy with other things, trying to create a several of issue targeting Lebanon, targeting Gaza, and about his speech now about the danger of Iran against Israel and the missile of Iran nowadays. Before it was the Iranian nuclear weapon, and today he moved to the missile of Iran. So he's trying to create and he want to burn the area all for his only benefit. And he in West Bank, if we look at the situation in West Bank, civilians are also suffering. Israeli settlement is still growing and still extend to another area from Palestine. So on the ground, moving to the ground on Gaza, civilians are await for reopen the border, and about the new technocrat government. They are powerless.
Yes.
They are waiting for reconstruct Gaza and to settle down, but there is no any glimmer of hope for civilians. And about I talked to several of Palestinians. They are,
Yes.
they are not suggesting anyone to go back. They said that the huge level of destruction in Gaza, it's unrepresented, and you can't imagine how is the situation. Especially we are in the coming month is a holy month for the Muslim, is Ramadan.
Yes.
Civilians in Gaza, they are desperate without any power. That's leading the people, and the situation in Gaza. It's unstable. Most of civilians are still suffering from the trauma, the war trauma and post-war trauma. I talked to several of civilians. Up to now, they are talking about their own experience and how the Israeli shell used to, and how the Israeli bombardment used to attack them. It's painful a lot on the ground. A situation is not like what we are watching on television and what we are reporting. 100 of humanitarian story on the ground, and still the suffer of people who is suffering from money shortage, and suffering of the Israeli, the injury of the war, suffering from losing a loved one, etc. So it's incredible situation. I guess if the second phase is going to be success, and I'm not optimist about it. Benjamin Netanyahu is happy with this situation, neither war nor peace, killing whoever, targeting civilians under the claim that defending Israel and defending itself. So these kind of situation, the similar people in Lebanon facing and suffering from, that's making the situation unstable in the area. Maybe it will explode at any time. This ceasefire, it's fragile. Israel continuously violated this ceasefire, but the international board is silent. What several of observers, they describe the situation as like a silent war in Gaza. Israel is still killing the civilians on the ground, but there is a less report about it, and the less reporting about the suffering of civilians also.
With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Ali Abushba for joining us today and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. During the last day of the 3-day visit to China, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that there should be more engagement between the two countries to build on mutual trust and respect that is so important. Prime Minister Starmer added that the visit signals just how important a moment UK-China, as the UK sees this as a reset of relationship with China. The CPC Party Secretary of Shanghai, Chen Jining, has said that the current climate of international challenges, both countries should deepen our exchanges and cooperation between our two countries. Let's listen into what Chen Jining and Starmer has shared.
中英同是联合国常任理事国，联合国安理会常任理事国，同为世界重要主要经济体。在当今世界全球性挑战不断增加的形势下，加深我们两国的交流与合作。
As you can see, I'm travelling with a large delegation of some of the top and best businesses in the United Kingdom, some of our best cultural organisations and institutions in art, in museums, in sport, and so much more travelling with us. And that signals just how important a moment we, the UK, see this reset of the relationship.
Now we move on to our tech news. SpaceX has updated Starlink's privacy policy to allow customer data to be used for artificial intelligence training. The change comes as the company prepares for a major initial public offering. Later this year, it also allows reports that SpaceX is in talks with merge with Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company, XAI. Under the revised policy, Starlink says users' data may be used to train machine learning models unless customers opt out. Privacy experts warn the move could raise concerns about surveillance and the use of personal information. Starlink operates more than 9,000 satellites and provides internet service to over 9 million users worldwide, creating a vast new data source as Musk expands his AI ambitions. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.